Hello, everyone. We are back here with the third episode of the fifth season. We have a very special guest with us. I'd say specifically a veteran in this industry who has been a part in this particular industry for more than 30 years. She's right now the program coordinator at Humber College of Content Strategy. We are privileged to welcome Cynthia. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And we won't tell people how long I've been in the industry, well, because they can add up all the numbers and then they'll know how old I am. But yeah, it's been a long time. It's been 20 plus years in the industry for sure.
It's been a privilege, the experience that you bring into the industry. So let us dig in right away with the very first question of this, third episode. So the first question is, as we mentioned that you have been such a long, part of this industry. So if you can elaborate your journey from being an account executive back in 1990 to being a senior managing director and to now being a program coordinator at Humber College, and how do you feel that it has changed you as a person?
Well, I think I like to think of it as I spent years in the client side. I've spent years on the agency side, and I've also spent years on the publisher, on the media side. So I feel like I've sort of done a carousel circus ride of all the different things that you can do. And what's great when you sort of start at the account executive at the sort of the very beginning stages of how clients work with organizations, you really do learn everything from the production to the building, to the development, to the creation, to the analysis that goes alongside with just about everything you do in marketing. So I feel like this has made me able to have many layers, sort of like layers of different things that I've learned. And I kind of think of most of my career as sort of miniature degrees in different areas. So when I've worked in media agencies, they've been degrees in how to work with media. When I've worked on the client side, it's been how to sort of do analysis as it relates to marketing. I did everything from starting direct delivery wine sites to BlackBerry sites that sit inside other sites when we launched the BlackBerry Playbook. So I feel like I've done a lot of different things over the years, and that's made me have many layers to the depth of my knowledge. And the things that I have been able to do over the course of the years have allowed me to really experiment and explore with many different kinds of clients.
That's amazing experience that you have. And I think it's super nice to just have like a lot of things that you try in life to also understand like what do you want to do. So that's amazing that you shared that. And actually I have a follow-up question on this, because I know for like a lot of students, even I get questions sometimes, like when we have informational chats, oh, like, where do I go? Do I go to the agency? Do I go to the client side? What is the difference? And I had those questions too when I was starting. I was like, where should I go? Where is better? What would you recommend to those who are still at school or like planning to graduate and get into industry? Like, what is the best kind of like a path? Is that an agency side, maybe where you can go and learn more? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that, personally, I think going in the agency route, starting on an agency side is a huge benefit to many students. You get to understand how big corporations work. You get an opportunity sometimes to touch on big client work and maybe not necessarily have to go right into the client side directly. You can touch on different client work. And the other part is the learning part. So as students, and myself included, like I'm a forever student, is the continual learning. And I think what agencies give you for very first jobs is generally the learning paths, the pathways for how to do things. And the infrastructure is set up there so that you have managers that are used to people coming in that may not know the skills, but have the right attitude, have the right aptitude. So I think that's the great part about starting with an agency. And the agency cultures are fun, they're young, the environment is something that's so warm and rewarding in that way, especially for people coming into the organization. And I think that's why, for me, I would tell people like race into the agency world. The client side world is a world where you begin to sort of really begin to finite what you want to do. So what I found when I started to work on client side, it was because I wanted to do specific things. I wanted to tackle specific learning skill sets. I wanted to tackle specific jobs. So for me, a lot of what I started to do was about building websites, building interaction design, building creations like that. And I couldn't do as much of that on the agency side, so I went to the client side. So I was moving where I could learn and build my skills. Right now, I see a lot of skills being developed in agencies, especially in agencies like the Starcoms of this world, where they're taking interns, they're taking young students, and they're allowing them to play in all different areas. And again, that's how you make people begin to see the kinds of things that make them inspired, that make them enjoy work, as opposed to just coming in and doing your job and leaving. You do need to be inspired to sort of live and work and enjoy advertising and marketing as a whole.
Of course, no, that's a great point. And honestly, I know, and I heard a lot. I work just a little bit on a different side, so I understand just a little bit how it works and what the difference is. Would you actually, again, sorry, follow-up question on my follow-up question. So I know that like, and I heard that before, that like agency, and right now I'm in agency too, like, and I love it. It's fun. It's like so many great people. You're learning so much. I know for some people, like in some students are coming to me with the question, oh, like, what do I choose? Like, I'm afraid that if I go for like social coordinator, I will not be able to go to like a strategy, or I want to try search. Do you think there are more opportunities like this, like to try different things, I guess, on a client side or like an agency side? I know in an agency you can kind of switch, but officially you need to just go and I don't know, take a new job because you're very specific as what you do. Would you say that like on a client side it works differently? You can try like multiple things at the same time?
Yeah, because I mean, what happens is a lot of clients go to agencies to get them to do some of the work and some of the elements. And so if you have an interest in particular areas of work, some of that work is only happening in the agency world. On the client side, it's a different level of control and it's a different level of ownership in terms of how you're moving stuff through from a marketing perspective. So while you may want to work in the marketing side of a client side to learn and hone particular skills like I did,
Yeah.
you may find that perhaps maybe the best way to approach it is to see the kinds of things you like to do, as opposed to sort of worrying about which direction you go in. Each client is also going through changes. So sometimes what you'll find is you'll be on the agency side and you'll find out that a client is in the process of changing or becoming or evolving or bringing in something new or innovating in some ways that it really sparks a lot of what you have an interest in. Sometimes we find that that's when you move and you go over to the other side, to different areas. But I think a lot of the limitations we put on sides and where you should go and if you should sort of stay, I think all of those things shouldn't be limitations. I think there are our own personal limitations. They're not anything written. It's not like there's some code of conduct that says you can't and you shouldn't. So I tell most people chase the things that make you interested. Worry less about the title, because right now the title is just simply as it's defined today. Worry more about the things that you're going to learn, the projects that you're going to be on, the kinds of things that you're going to do every single day, less about the title and what it's called. Because again, we're calling things today, like your title, social media, it may be different in 5 years because social media itself is changing as well.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much for this. And I think for a lot of people would be really important to hear this too. Also because like, I feel like a lot of people are really scared and they put these limitations, like fears and everything on themselves. And they're like, oh, I need to go there because it might be better, or I shouldn't, I should stay. It'll be better here. There's no other better place to go. So it was really great to hear your answer. Thank you so much for this. And I guess jumping in a second question, or fourth question, I guess, in this case, is about resources. Like there is so much stuff right now like that we can have access to, especially with COVID. I think things changed like so quickly and we got access to like so many things. And if you're in advertising, like you can go to college if you want to, university, you can go online, you can take courses, LinkedIn learning, like there's so much. And like a lot of resources out there. But what were the resources for you that help you along the way in your career?
Well, I mean, we didn't have as much learning. So for me, the number one thing was learning. Like it was the resources that I could find. It was the books, it was the networkings. I put my hand up to go to just about every single conference I could get myself to. Again, just to meet and to hear and to listen to what people had to say and how things were working. I think if you feed that curiosity, it naturally comes back to you. It gives you really good returns if you're constantly sort of looking for things. And I always sort of caution students not to be looking for jobs, but to be looking for opportunities, to looking for places that they can sort of take what they already have and maybe throw it in the mix and do something with it. So I do think for me, resources have been a lot about learning. But I'll tell you, one of the funny things that's a resource for me is technology. I have been like a tech, I love technology. I have loved technology since the very, very beginning. And it's actually technology that got me into a lot of the jobs because I was sort of the first person, this is how old I am, but I was one of the first people that sort of wanted to set up apples to make a production line in a Mac studio for an agency that didn't even have anything like that. And that was sort of mainly because I was interested in technology. I was interested in how things worked and why they worked the way they did. And I was sort of the same way with software. As I started to learn design software, I wanted to learn how it worked or why it worked. Why did it work the way it did? And that led me into sort of production work, a lot of creative production work. Much like the internet, when the internet came along, I kind of wanted to know how it worked. I wanted to know what it did and how, in order to sell it to other clients, in order to sell how to advertise, you almost had to learn how it worked. And so I think the technology for me, chasing that interest, chasing that sort of piece of it was really, really important. What's interesting though, too, is, and Trish will tell you this, is that the other side of my technology love is my love of analog, of drawing, of writing, and of planning, and of organizing. So I was always like a natural organizer. And so you mix technology with natural organizing, and it's sort of the two began to feed each other off. And for me, those were really, really good resources because the analog and the planning and the drawing and the mind mapping and the brainstorming was something I could do on paper and I could control. And learning how to do this digitally, learning how to do this electronically, and learning how to tell these stories made me a better account director, made me a better account person, made me tell stories in a way that became better. So much so that I learned enough of it that I started to teach it. And so I started to pass on how do other people tell stories? How do you do this in organizations? How do you build content strategies? So for me, I think the resources along the way have been my own sort of curiosity. And like you had said, this learning, this aptitude, this want to continue to learn and to never really be satisfied with the fact that I know enough. I really just feel like I don't know anywhere near enough. I still feel like I have a lot more to learn.
Of course, you have that. No one is gonna stop anyone from learning. And Cynthia, I adore you the way that everyone learns everything every day, and you are just that kind of human being who just love learning. And it is a prime example for all your students and for all the audience that will be listening to this. The one thing that I wanted to point out specifically is the way that you taught me how effective is to plan your day. And I think so that is coming into play right now in an agency life, specifically here. And with everything going around in this world with COVID and everything, I think so if you can plan your day in a specific way, half of your problems are done. So that is one of the most important resource for anyone that is looking forward to start their day, sort it out, irrespective of the fact they are either working, studying, or finding a job. If you can plan your day, you got it. I mean, I would say 70% of the things are done for you. You just need to execute after that. So I 100% agree there. Okay, yeah. Moving on to the next point and next question with this conversation is, we have talked a lot about how your career has folded, how resources have been helpful. Now let's talk about the people who have been influential to you. So who are those people who have, played a crucial role or would have had played the most influential role to you in your career?
Well, I think I'd probably be lying if I didn't say my parents. I think my parents probably influenced me the most. I came to Canada as a very young immigrant. And for the most part, we didn't have too much family here. We sort of adopted Canadian families that were here. My dad was in advertising and he brought all the advertising friends. So most of the people that I got to know as family here in Canada were from the advertising community and the world and the marketing community. And they definitely sort of influenced me. I think my dad was very entrepreneurial. He started his own agency here. So that influenced me a lot about how businesses work, how organizations work, how structure works. And I think the other part that I really am uniquely benefited by is the fact that my mom is a watercolorist. She's a painter. And so I had this sort of account planning, regimented, structured dad, and I had this sort of crazy art teacher mom. And that's how I've been influenced into sort of having these two worlds where I do like to organize, but I do actually adore and really do enjoy the art of creating things. So yeah, without a doubt, my parents influenced me. I think I'm tremendously influenced by being an immigrant. I'm tremendously influenced by coming to Canada without a family and adopting sort of many parts of Canada at times, you know, and many cultures and areas around the territories of Toronto, as we've all learned. You know, you guys have come here, you've explored it, you've experimented, and it sort of, it sucks you in and you become part of it. And I think I'm influenced by that for forever. I've had good managers and I have had terrible managers over the time. And I don't think I was necessarily influenced by any particular people in those roles, but I was influenced by the cultures that I was in. I was tremendously influenced by working for a big organization like Starcom, just as much as I was influenced by working for a small entrepreneurial company like Magnata Winery, you know, just startup and trying to get stuff done here in Canada. So yeah, I think it's a combination of people and culture for me, two things that have influenced me tremendously, and especially the role of moving here and coming here and growing here and learning here.
Of course, I honestly think that part of even being immigrants and coming here to Canada, it also gives you, I don't know, that desire to continue learning and moving. And I feel like a lot of people who came to Canada at some point of their life, they brought a little bit of their culture here too, and that really, I don't know, influence them. And I can speak even for myself, like coming from Ukraine, definitely agree with the point of parents being an influence, and also culture in people around you. Culture, I think, is super important. That's why I feel like when students are deciding where they want to go, like what job to take, what opportunity to take, they also should understand like what culture I'm going to be in, like if I like it or not like it. That's why I think that is like super important when you make it that important decision for yourself. And jumping in the next question, kind of switching the topic just a little bit. So would love to know about the myth about media, digital and print that you would like to debunk. So anything you could think of?
Yeah, I think the big thing, media gets a bad rap for being very boring. And I will say the one thing that happens in media is that oftentimes I can remember clearly having a whole series of presentations. And at the very end of every presentation, they allocated 15 minutes for the media part. So it was 2 hours of creative presentations, 1 hour of like the account people telling what was going to happen. And at the very end, the 15 minutes, the media people would come in and say, here's a chart of how much we're going to spend, and here's the total of what we'll spend. And it gets a bad rap because oftentimes we are spending large amounts on behalf of the client, but we are deciding the context for the communications. We are deciding how these pieces, these creative communications that we're helping people produce, how they land on people, how they arrive at people. And I think that it gets a bad rap for not sort of being able to be as creative and innovative as it actually is. And we talk about planning even your day, planning an entire campaign, getting it all out there, getting it lifted up and put and delivered and on time and on budget and in scope and everything like that. It's a rather remarkable production process that I think oftentimes people miss it. So for me, media gets a bad rap for being boring. It gets a bad rap for being stuck in Excel spreadsheets. And I think that Excel could be beautiful, but it's also about how you approach it. I think it's how you sort of dig into these things.
Beautifully explained. I couldn't have actually explained it more better, considering that I have been in media for around now 5 years. I do understand that sometimes people say it is boring, but it's all about yourself, that how, as you pointed out, planning, how you're going to take that particular thing. Are you good with numbers? How exciting does numbers look for into you? Does that particular creative looks good for you? Are you like a social media person? So those kind of things just pop in yourself. And I personally believe, as you have earlier pointed out, agency life is where you find out that where do you want to see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years. So that kind of answers the question for a lot. If you think from a perspective that you want to be in media, so agency is there where you can actually try and test, and see that if you can survive in that particular area. Yeah. So moving on to the next question, I believe we have only around 10 minutes. So moving on to the next question, it's particularly in terms of now from a 30 years of experience to, let's assume that Cynthia is an 18-year-old. So if you could turn back the time and ask yourself that, ask your 18-year-old self that, what would you tell her, like in terms of anything that you would have liked to change, and you would have done something differently?
It's funny. I saw this question and I sort of thought about it for a long time, but I think it repeats itself for me as something that I've been asking myself a lot recently as well, which is like, what's the race? Like, there is no race. And if I could go back to my 18-year-old self, I would say that there is no race. There is no right. There's no wrong. There is no fast track. There is no slow movement. There is no right direction. And I think I would have given myself a lot more grace in terms of getting to what I needed to get to. I don't think I would have chased as much, thinking that I had to get there before a certain time, before I hit a certain age, before I did certain things. I really do believe that I no longer I would say to myself, not definitely, what's the race? I think I'd probably also tell my 18-year-old self to buy more than 10 Apple shares, because I was able to buy them at a very, very low price when they were first there. And I would tell myself to buy more.
Well, definitely agree with the second point, that's for sure. With the first point, I would say that's super important for students to hear this, because I feel like we are all chasing something, and it makes us unsatisfied with our life, with what you do, and we think that we're not good enough, and we need to, I don't know, get a high salary, get a promotion, but it usually just like we need just to take a moment to enjoy like our life and stop being in that race. I'm guilty of that, been trying to get out of that with my perfectionist mind. So it's been difficult, but I guess for everyone, it should be learning opportunity too. And so it like COVID really, I feel like impacted like how we feel, like what we do, and like everything, I guess. I can't believe it's been like 2 years. I spoke to, like, I'm from Seneca, like I graduated from Seneca. Love my college, still staying in touch with some of the professors from there. And what they told me is that it's been a little bit hard to keep like students engaged, and everyone is feeling different. Someone is burnt out, someone is still staying at home, like internationally. So how COVID changed like you as a professor, as a human, and how were you able to still kind of be, I don't know, like on a track with like helping students and make sure that everything okay? I know that things changed after COVID, so would love to hear your thoughts. So
Yeah, it's been a tough road for all of us, I think, through COVID. And I my hat's off to students first and foremost. I mean, they have been, trying to do this thing to fill their brains, and trying to do it in the middle of lockdowns and in the middle of remote works. We had 1 week to change our curriculum and move to online. And that 1 week pivot, it just pivoted my brain into a direction that said I had to learn how to change. And I think what COVID did for me was it as a professor, it really just told me that plans can change. Like, even the most beautifully articulate curriculums that every week is all planned out and every exercise is perfectly aligned and every assignment is sort of check marked off. What it taught me was that that's not life. Life is messy. Life doesn't come in on time. Life doesn't sort of deliver things. Life gives you things like these pandemics. And so it's taught me that things can change. And then the resultant part about it is it changed my kind of idea about accessibility and inclusion. It changed the concept of what that meant for me, because I had students that were on flip phones. I had students that had to leave halfway through the semester, not wanting to leave, but they just had to. So it completely changed the way I viewed things like accessibility. It made me understand that you had to give a flexibility in an area that beforehand wasn't really working to begin with. So just because somebody showed up in class didn't mean that they were there. So why was attendance as important as engagement? So it changed the way in which I looked at the way in which students participated and engaged. The other thing that I think, and I keep telling my students this all along, and I'll tell you this, any student who has survived COVID, that's a skill set I would put at the top of my resume. I know how to learn online. Self-autonomous, like how to get this stuff done. Like Trish was saying, like planning your days, getting stuff done in a day. These are skills that I think every single person right now, if you're a student, you put on the top of your resume as being something you can bring in. We learned how to collaborate online. We learned how to have fun. And, I'm very, very grateful for my classrooms, for the students, because they also helped me. I had some really tough days in COVID. I lost my mother. I had my son who was ill. So things weren't so great, but it made me a more human teacher, I think.
I kind of agree, the person that I have become, Jarina have become, Cynthia yourself have become, or across the globe, people have suffered a lot. I mean, the most important thing that one has done is pivoted. One who has pivoted in this manner or has survived or has flexibly, survived in this particular environment has done the best. I know emotionally and personally, people have lost a lot, but professionally, if I have to say anything, I kind of agree there that, the students, what they have done is tremendous. And how they're learning is something that generations will come and see and notice that how they can also learn online with everything now being changed. So, I 100% agree. Yeah, I know that we have only 3 minutes left, so I'll put in the last question of our today's episode, and this is the most important question, I believe. That what advice do you will give to someone who want to pursue a similar career to yours, or to all the young marketeers out there?
I'd say do it all. Be willing, try things. If you want to, I think I just listened to a lovely talk, and I thought the words and the language, they're not mine, but it's like, don't let anyone blow your candles out. You are bright human beings that have learned a lot, that have struggled through things. And it's hard to shine bright right now in this sort of remote world, to have our resumes found, to find different positions, to find internships, that you sometimes begin to sort of darken up your ideas and on what you can and can't be done. So I would tell you all to shine bright. Don't let anybody make you shine any less than you need to. And do it all. Try things. Don't chase titles. Don't chase money. Chase things to do with your days. Fill your brains with things that make you better as a person. Not just money, not just titles, not just big promotions, not just big organizations, but fill your brains and your hearts and your souls with things that make you better as a person. And I think that's the best advice I could give.
Thank you for this. I think that was a beautiful advice, and definitely a lot of students, new graduates, like should really listen to this and really, I don't know, be happy that they had an opportunity to hear that from you. Thank you so much for like sharing your knowledge with us today, the tips for students, new graduates, sharing your story. It was really inspiring, and I know, and even for us, and of course, like for students, new graduates, everything that you said today will be very important for them to hear.
It was lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for having me, both of you.
It was a pleasure. I mean, thank you for doing this, Cynthia. It was literally a pleasure, and I mean, you are one of those veterans that people will love to listen. I'm 100% sure that, your students and everyone is gonna love it when they are gonna listen.
Well, thank you so much. I look forward to chatting one day again in the future.
For sure, for sure. Till
Yeah.
then, have a great evening. Take care, and we'll meet soon.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.